Hey beautiful, how you doing today? Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time joining us. Please make sure you hit subscribe and let's get on with the video. So I've seen comments in the past before asking questions about whether or not queens are used to pay off debts in prison, or like husbands, whether husbands will use, a queen in order to pay off debts. And I do want to make a video talking about that, but at first I thought to myself, well, before I make a video discussing whether men use queens to pay off debts, which they do, it is definitely accurate. That statement is accurate. It happens all the time. It's not like a sometimey thing or maybe it happens. It happens like 100% of the time, all the time. It is just something that always happens. Like, it happened to me with each guy that I was with. Mountain Man, Boss, my prison sugar daddy, and the worst was Cam. Cam definitely used me to pay off debts all the time. And it just happens. But before doing that video, because I need a little bit, I need to calm myself down just a little bit before I talk about that. Just because I want to contact the prison and have that man sent to higher levels. But let me just calm myself down. So in order to do that, first I decided, I was like, well, you know what? Let me talk about how these men actually will put themselves in debt, honey, in order to run behind a queen, in order to chase a queen and try to entice them and reel them in and pull them in. Like, let me expose the motherfucking guys first before I have to tell y'all about how, yeah, us girlies be having to put our ass out on the line, shaking our booty on the line, flirting with these criminals, these toothless criminals, in order to get a couple of soups and honey buns and coffee, But that's a different video. I wanted to start off by giving an example. I personally had heard about this before I even went to prison. Like, when I was still in jail, guys would tell me all the time, like, oh my gosh, if you go to prison, or when you get to prison, there's going to be bodies dropping over you. Guys will be fighting over you. And they weren't saying it because I was, like, just so pretty. They were saying it because of the mere fact that I'm gay. The fact that I have an ass, that I don't mind, having a little work done back there. The fact that I enjoy pleasuring guys. This quality alone, this attribute alone, will make me a prized possession in prison. And it is true. It's like, out here, this is something that people don't want to say, but in there, everybody's saying it all the time. Like, everybody knows this, and even the idiots that are online talking shit, they know it too. But now they're out here with women. It's kind of like a camp thing. Like, people know what goes on at camp, but don't nobody share it when you get back to school, because now you're back around your friends and the girls and all of this stuff, like, it's the same sort of shit. But anyway, people would tell me, they're like, yeah, bodies will be dropping over you. Guys, they'll even put themselves in debt. You have guys that they will run up like a bill just in order to give everything to a queen. Well, they didn't use the term queens, they would say a punk or a boy or something like that. But when I heard about this, my first thought was like, well, I'm not trying to get anybody to be running up no debts. First of all, in my mind, I was thinking, like, am I going to have to pay back these debts? Like, I'm not doing shit in order to pay off some debt that this guy done ran up trying to for me. Like, I'm good. My mom sends me money. Honey, my mama puts money on my books. I'm good. I don't need to be, getting involved in no foolishness. But it did happen to me anyway, by surprise. I didn't even realize this. When I was at the first compound, I got locked up and I served 3 years. 3.5 years. The first year was in jail, and the last 2.5 years were in prison. Immediately after being sent to prison, I went to like a level 2 low-level prison for 2 weeks to be classified, and then I was classified and officially went to a state facility, a level 3 prison, and I was there for 5 months before I was transferred to a different level 3 facility, and that was a private institution. The state facility that I was at, I was there for 5 months. I was dating this guy, Mountain Man, and we were trying to get in the cell together, having a difficult time trying to get in the cell together. The administration, they really weren't for me in particular, and then they weren't really trying to help the homosexuals out at this point in time, because they had just kind of like cleared their compound of a lot of homosexuals because of all the scandalous shit that them bitches were doing at the time. So I just came at like a bad time, and the more trouble they had trying to house me, the more that they eventually started doing stuff intentionally trying to make my time harder. They would put me in cells with gang members, knowing that I had already had trouble with a gang member. They put me in the cell with another queen's husband. That's never good. Like, that's never good, you know? And then they put me in the cell with this guy who he was known to have dealt with this transgender girl, this tranny, Katrina. I call her Katrina. He had dealt with her, like, fooled around with her on a different compound. They had already known each other from, like, years before, because I'm a newbie, but everybody else that's there, they've been doing time, 8 years, 6 years, you know, 10 years. Like, they know each other. It was this guy. He was, he was really, big, honey. Oh my gosh, that's just, like, the only thing that I could say. I always talk about Cam and how well endowed Cam was. Cam was very nice. His body was very nice. I'll never take that away from Cam. Out of all the things that I hate about this man now, and I wish to never speak his name again or think of him or even pretend like he exists or that the relationship ever existed, out of all of those feelings, I will never take away the fact that Cam had a banging ass body. Oh my gosh. I was very much in love with Cam's body. That's probably the thing that I loved most about him, actually. Everything else really drove me insane about him, but his body was, like, just perfect. But even as blessed as he was, because I'm kind of getting a little bit distracted here. Even as blessed as he was, the biggest dick, honey, that I have ever seen attached to a man was this guy. No lie. And especially, it was made to appear even thicker and bigger because of how thin he was. He was dark skinned, which I'm somebody, I don't know why I've always been like this. I never actually have been, it's weird. Like, I've never actually been into guys that are like my complexion for some bizarre reason, unless they're Spanish. Like, I love Spanish guys. If they're Spanish, I like, you know, obviously they're usually a tan complexion. But in terms of like white or black, I've usually only liked white guys or black guys, and the black guys that I like, the darker the better. I don't know, it's something about the complexion, it just really looks very good to me. Like, it looks very rich and very sexy, you know. I just love it. I love dark complected guys, I guess. And this man was dark, like very dark skinned, and it was gorgeous. He himself was not the most good looking guy. He wasn't bad looking. He was just like an average looking guy. I'm trying to think of somebody that I could like compare him to, but he was just a regular looking guy, but he had dark skin, and then he had this big freaking dick. Huge. It was huge. It was the biggest one that I've ever taken. And that's actually how we actually did it, because I didn't want to do it with him. I was with Mountain Man at the time, and even though we were having, like, we would go back and forth, and our relationship, it was garbage. All my relationships are always garbage, go figure. But even though we were going back and forth and, you know, having our issues at that moment, I still felt like I was with him. But I was getting frustrated with the fact that everyone's telling me, as a queen, my husband is supposed to be taking care of everything. My husband is the one who's supposed to pave the way for me to move into the cell with him, or to find a cell space for us to move in. That's on him. Like, it's on the man to actually do this for me. Like, that's the whole point. That's the whole perk of being able to be worthy to actually get a queen. Yes, I said worthy to get a queen. Like in prison, you actually have to have some sort of status, some sort of advantage, some sort of attribute, something that makes you better than, you know, the average person, in order to really actually have a queen. I mean, anybody can get like their dick sucked if you have the right price, I suppose, but in order to actually claim one, like actually, you know, tie one to you, there has to be something about you that is, you know, better than just everybody else, you know, in some kind of way. So, I mean, I was just frustrated that I have to deal. I'm making excuses. I realize that I'm just in the wrong period, but I'm just, like, letting you know where I was at. Like, I was frustrated that I'm moving, you know, having all this stress. I'm dealing with it by myself. I'm trying to figure it out on my own. Meanwhile, he and I were having our issues as it was. I was not really, like, accepting the charge that he had. I just felt very frustrated. And then now I'm in the cell with this guy who intentionally was trying to charm me. Now we're getting to the point of this video. This guy, he worked in the kitchen, and he would get me high every day. He was getting the wine, and then also he didn't have shit in the cell. I actually had more stuff than him, which is why it confused me that he was able to suddenly get all of these things. Like every day he would, you know, cook a bowl of pizza. I was only in the cell with him for like a week and a half. Excuse me, but nevertheless, each night he was making sure that we had bowl pizzas or at least a soup, and then I had cookies and a honey bun to go with it. I like drinking soda, so he would get soda and get the exact kind that I wanted, because then I'm like, oh, I like Mountain Dews, and he would make sure to get the Mountain Dews. Plus we was, you know, getting high and drinking the prison wine, which that ain't cheap. You don't, only queens get that stuff for free, and even then it's not technically for free, you know what I'm saying? Like you have to either be engaged with the person sexually, or at least flirting with them, charming them, making them believe that they might have a chance with you at some point, you know, and that's how you get things for free as a queen in prison. But anyway, he, you know, was doing this every night. Like, I had food and I was getting lit, you know. And I was wondering how he was able to do this, and I did ask him, but he told me, he was like, oh, because since I work in the kitchen, I'm able to get things from the kitchen, and I bring it back to the pod, and, you know, I sell it to people, and that's how I get by. Which I knew that is an actual hustle. That is something that a lot of people do. Working in the kitchen is known in prison as the best job that you could have. It's like the best hustle that you can get. Not only is it one of the highest paying like jobs in prison, working in the kitchen, but also what makes it the best hustle is because you encounter the entire compound. Like, you come across the whole compound. Everybody goes to the chow hall to eat, and also you can even network with the administration, with the staff. Like not all of the staff, but I think maybe all of the staff, because they're not, it's like a whole protocol for them to leave off the compound and get back on, like if they're gonna go somewhere to eat. And then plus, a lot of prisons are usually in the middle of nowhere, so they eat chow hall food too. They usually get special meals prepared, like they get fancier stuff than regular inmates. But still in all, if you work in the kitchen, you're able to connect with them, chat with them, charm them if you can. And then in terms of the inmates, you can pass things around for people. People get paid for that. Or if you do steal stuff, you can give it to somebody through the chow hall. Like, it's a very popular hustle. So when he said that, I definitely believed him, you know. It wasn't until later when I was moved out of that, well, how I ended up sleeping with him, actually, just side note, since I didn't mention it, is, he made it clear before I even moved in the cell, he was into me and Katrina, because I told you, him and Katrina, I'm pretty sure they had already fooled around, like, years ago. Like, it was like 4 years prior to this time. They had messed around at some point. It was just kind of like an inside joke between them. And when she got on the compound and we were in the cell together, and we would be in the chow hall, like, eating meals together, he came around a couple of different times to say hi to her and introduce himself to me. And he definitely flirted with both of us at the time. You know, anybody, any regular guy that chats with a queen usually is going to flirt with the queen anyway, like in prison. And I had already known this. So then when I moved in the cell with him, I was definitely like kind of like already on edge, and I'm like making it clear to him, like, I already got a man, I'm not doing anything with you, I just want you to know, like, I'm not even really trying to stay in the cell, I'm trying to get into the cell with Mountain Man. And he's like, okay, that's cool. And that night, then already he's, you know, getting me high and everything, and he's just like, oh, I just want you to have a good time while you're here, and you know, you should just be able to relax and kick back and not worry about anything. And I was like, okay, well, thank you, you know. And then it was like the next night, then he's telling, when, you know, he's making sure I'm good to go again, like got a full stomach, riding easy and everything. Then he's like, you know, how come your man don't do this? Like, he ain't even sent you anything or brought you nothing or gotten anything to you to make sure you're all right. Like, you know, if I was your man, you know, I'd be making sure you're like this all the time. And I was like, I don't believe you. He was like, you'll see, I'm gonna get you right all, you know, all the time. And I think it was the third night. I don't think it was that night. I think it was the third night that I was in there that we were feeling good again. And this time, I didn't like to go out of the cell much because I felt very uncomfortable anytime I was in the pod. I was always like that, my whole bid. Like, I really didn't like being out in the pod too much. Unless there was, like, queens, like other gay guys in the pod, that I could kick it with them. Otherwise, I didn't really, and even then, the gay guys don't really, they're not too chummy, you know, but I would try to be. But other than that, I'd really, if I could find a comfortable situation, even halfway comfortable, I really liked staying in the cell all the time, because I was just, you know, I didn't like the eyes on me all the time, the guys, like, you know, trying to start a conversation, things like that. I just really tried to avoid it. So I would be in this cell a lot too. And of course, as I'm in there, he would be in, if I was in that cell, he was in that cell. And if I would leave out that cell to just even sit at the table for a minute and maybe watch like the pod TV or just listen to my music on the headphones, he would come out and he would just like stand around and just watch me. Like, just, this is what I be telling you in other videos. I've made other videos where I've talked about how the guys, they become very obsessive over the queens, like in no time flat. But so that night we were like playing cards and we're feeling good and everything, and he was excited. That's what it was. And I could see him like popping up like in his pants, and from seeing him pop like that, I was able to see like the length and the thickness, and I was like, there's no way that it's that big. And he's just like, yeah, it is, I'll show you. And he just pulls it out and just shows it to me. And like a hoe, y'all, like a dirty old skink. After I had seen it, I'm sorry, I just had to have it. After I seen that, I just could not help myself. I was like, oh my gosh, because my first thought was like, I wonder how that feels like going in, you know, like, oh my gosh, like, and it felt great. To answer the question, it felt great. But this is not the point of the video. The point of this video was actually to talk about how he ran himself into debt. That whole week and a half that he was getting me high and cooking and making sure I had, you know, snacks and sodas and stuff like that, he was borrowing it from people. He was running up a tab. And I found that out later when eventually I did get moved out of that cell because Mountain Man obviously wasn't having it. He kind of figured that we were doing something, like, you know, in the cell. Plus the guy already started acting like jealous anytime he saw me on the rec yard or in the chow hall kicking it with Mountain Man. We were trying to work things out, you know, whatever, and the guy, he'd just be, started acting a fool. And actually I think he even like went up to Mountain Man at one point, and I'm like, this is not good, I gotta get out of this situation. Mountain Man's trying to get me out, and I end up moving out, and that's how I get into the pod with KJ, Stars, and T-Shirt. These people that I had known like on the compound. I'm in the pod with them, kicking it, everything. we were getting drunk because T-Shirt, the dude T-Shirt in there, he used to make wine, and I don't know if somebody ratted us out. I don't know if we were just being too obvious, but ended up the COs came into the pod, raided the whole thing. They arrested like 8 people that night, the 4 of us and 4 other people included, and took us all to the hole, and we were all charged with like intoxication. While I was back in the hole, he ends up, the dude that I was in the cell with ends up coming in there, and at first I thought that he was just trying to follow me, but then as people were talking, come to find out he was back there because he was skipping out on bills. He had owed so many people in the pod that he couldn't pay back, that he checked himself into the freaking hole, and he was actually trying to like leave the compound, but I don't know if he stayed on the compound and just got moved like maybe to the other side of the yard. Some people try to do that because they feel like that is good enough, I guess, good enough protection. But a lot of people usually they try to just like move compounds when they skip out on bills like that. But that is my story of where, my only story of where somebody actually went into debt because of me. But I had seen, apart from myself, which we already got 20 minutes, but apart from myself, I had seen tons of other queens actually intentionally get guys to run up bills, or guys, they literally would go to anybody, the store box person, and get a bunch of stuff just so they can turn around and give it to a queen. I'm telling you, it happens all the time, all the time. But that is my video. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to hear like just personal stories of my time in prison, I got some journal entries. The link is in the description. And please subscribe, and I will see you guys later. I will do a video on how guys use queens to pay off debts. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about how Cam just, oh my gosh, that man just abused me from day 1 until the last day. And I'm just so glad to finally be free of him. Oh my goodness, thankfully. Like, even though it's hard, I had so much hope and so much wishes, you know, for a brighter future, but I think it's a blessing. I think that God, like, saved me from really something way worse happening, you know, something way worse, because we're just on 2 different paths, you know. And that is all she wrote. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Have a great day. Be safe.